Welcome back to the Absolute Podcast. This episode is episode 29. The guest today is Ian McCandless. Ian McCandless is an amazing guy, amazing character. He's a really good man. I don't know how else to put it. We talked about and discussed on knives, a lot of history of the knives and a lot of metal. You definitely will have a lot more information on different grades of steel, which is really interesting. And I also recommend that you just listen to the thing to get more insight on that topic. You know, it really is interesting, and I think that hopefully one of you guys might be inspired to even make your own. And then once you make your own knife, you can have that knife forever. So anyways, enjoy the episode. Thank you for listening. If you're watching the YouTube video, I am sitting on my table right now. And why am I doing that? I don't know. But if you're listening, just imagine me sitting on a table, just talking to you guys. All right, before we get into today's episode, we are sponsored by Piccadilly Coffee. Piccadilly Coffee Roasters. If you go to their website called piccadillycoffee.ca and use the promo code MitchellJones20, you can get 20% off all your purchases. So MitchellJones20, that's Mitchell Jones lowercase, and then 20 as in 20. So use MitchellJones20 at piccadillycoffee.ca on their online store for 20% off. And you can go get yourself a bunch of different stuff, okay? You can get yourself coffee. You can get yourself cups. You can get even other people coffee and cups, as well as tons of other things like clothes and all their other merchandise. Go check it out, piccadillycoffee.ca, MitchellJones20 for 20% off. All right, now into the episode, baby boo. Game or what? That's all I'm waiting for. I don't even care about the podcast anymore. I'm just ready to hop on the ice.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about anything else. All right, don't be nervous because this is just you and me talking, and there just happens to be a couple viewers.
Maybe more.
All right.
Maybe I should get closer to the table. I'm pretty far away.
Cool. All right. So, Ian McCandless, everybody. If anybody didn't hear the intro already, and you specialize in carpentry.
I wouldn't say specialized, but that's what I do on the daily. Yes.
That's what you do on the daily.
Yeah.
But then, as a hobby, you make knives.
Yes, sir.
And you were just talking to me about, like, the investment into this podcast and, like, seeing how that is. But it's the same thing for you, where you're investing in quite a bit of money just to get started in, like, working with metal. Really?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Unless you already grew up in it. I don't know.
No, I started. Well, do you want me to go right into how?
Yeah, go right in.
So I was actually going through my pictures the other day, and in 2014, I would have been 20, I think. Anyway, I got there was a back home in Ontario. There's a knife maker there, and I got a hunting knife from him, and he made custom knives. Just an old guy, and like he was literally in the back of the woods. But I went and saw him, and I told him, he's a real quiet guy. Anyway, I told him I was interested, and he's like, "Oh, here you go." He gave me just a chunk of steel, and it was 440C, which, like, back in the day, that was, I guess you could call kind of a super steel. Like, it's a stainless steel.
Okay.
Very common, but it's been outdone by a lot of other stainless steels now. Anyway, he gave me that, and I made my first two knives with that. I cut them out with a hacksaw.
Wow.
And then used a bunch of files to file them out to shape, and then file the bevels on it, and it took way too long. But I really enjoyed it. Like, loved it. And then I found there was another knife maker in North Bay, which is about an hour north of me. And he actually sold a bunch of supplies. Like, he's still selling supplies, but he had grinders, the belts, handle material, like anything for making knives. Mm-hmm. And he also made them, so he was a wealth of knowledge. And I had no way. Like, you need a digitally controlled kiln to heat treat stainless.
Oh, okay.
Like, high carbon steel, you can just heat it up to pretty much non-magnetic for the most part.
Yeah.
And then, which is around 1475 Fahrenheit, 1500. Mm-hmm. But when you get into stainless, there's more of a science behind it. You have to hold it at like critical, like within 20 degrees critical temperature, and you'll need soak times as well.
Yeah.
And it gets really hot. Like, that's 1925, 1950 Fahrenheit. And it's hard to control that in a forge or just with a torch.
Yeah.
Some people have done it, but like, I'm not into that. So anyway, when I got that, Guy in North Bay, he treated those 2 knives for me. My dad still has one. That was the first one I made, and I made it because there's a company still around called Bark River Knives.
Okay.
And they're in Michigan. They had a little knife on there. It was like $140. I was like, man, I want that. It's like, I could probably make that.
Yeah.
So I made my little rendition of it. Doesn't look well, it looks kind of the same, but definitely not as good. Anyway, made that, give it to my dad, made another one, give it to my best friend then. And I don't know where that one went. I think one of his friends stole it or something like that. Anyway.
I will say that a knife, greatest gift of all time, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah?
It's like, I told people, I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and I said, a knife you can never go wrong with for anybody.
Yeah.
Like, you know Vince, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I just bought him like a simple knife from like Canadian Tire, but it said Vincent right on it.
Yeah.
And like, he loved it. Like,
oh, right.
But it's a game changer because anybody can use it.
Right.
For anything.
Yeah.
Even if it just sits in your kitchen. Like,
Well,
something as simple as that. But
yeah,
I don't
definitely.
know. I love just carrying a knife with me usually and just having something. But I want a custom made knife, which I'm talking to you, so we'll have to do something up sometime.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Anyways, I always think it's the greatest gift. So when you said you gave one to your dad and you gave one to your best friend and stuff, I just...
Yeah. Oh, and like you said, it's not like you need expertise to use them or anything. Like there's a knife that you need for it. Like, I mean, obviously you can get into, like if you get into kitchen knives, then it's more of a finesse thing. Like it's a lot more, well, I guess they all are, but like chef's knives, like the thinner they are, usually people like enjoy them more.
Really?
Like if you get into more...
Is that a kitchen knife?
Yeah, this one's a chef knife. That's like an 8-inch chef right there. So like, you can have a look at it. But anyway, sure. It's like that's pretty thin in my opinion, but like it can go a lot thinner.
What's the niceness about having them so thin? Because this is super thin to me. Like I feel like all my kitchen knives are thicker than this.
Lot easier to slide through food. Like a lot of times, like I am no professional. This is just my hobby. But you look at other guys like one of the highest end knife makers that I can think of that makes primarily chef's knives is a guy named Mareko Mamasi.
Okay.
Mamasi Fire Arts, and like he's a bladesmith, so he forges, and it's all Damascus. He's made a few. I think he makes a few mono steel.
So what does that mean, Damascus?
It's layered steel. So you'd have alternating high carbon and high nickel steels.
Oh, okay.
And then you'd layer that up. Say you start with a 20 or 40 or 30 layer stack, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You heat that up in your forge to forge welding temps. So like the steel is hot enough not quite to melt, but when you hit it or squish it in a press, it literally welds together, becomes one billet.
Oh, okay.
So then you'd forge that down, stretch it out, and then you can cut it, fold it again, so you're making more layers.
Yep.
And then you can cut, like if you're going to get into mosaic, I haven't done it. This is purely just knowledge that I've learned from listening to podcasts or reading books. Mm-hmm. But you can cut it on its bias in different angles. You can also forge it on angles, or you can forge in W's and then stack them and re-weld them.
Okay.
And like,
I wish I had a visual of that. That's
like
I
couldn't. Yeah, but if you look up mosaic Damascus, I mean, there's
and that's
YouTube
the designs in the blade, right?
That's right.
Like the art, like almost looks like an oil in a sense, kind of thing. Yeah,
kind of. Like a really common one is like raindrop or ladder pattern because they're super easy to make. Like raindrop is literally just drill holes in it and then forge it out again.
Really?
And then you get all these dots and everything through there.
That's cool.
Yeah. But anyway, he makes, and they're super thin. Like they'll cut through vegetables without being sharpened, and then he sharpens them, so they're that thin.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I still have to refine that. In my opinion, like I make more hunting and outdoor knives and fillet knives. That's what I like. Ultimately, I'd love to get into like historical stuff, like the mountain men stuff, buoys, and just like rustic looking stuff. That's what I like. Yeah. I haven't gotten there yet.
Like a real workman knife type.
Yeah, kind of
feel
a deal
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like if it like this is my personal knife here. I made this I don't know how many years ago, but it's my hunting knife, and it's got a bit of grease on it, but you can see like it's a high carbon steel, so it's 1095, super simple. It used to be made out of, like they might even still use it, but it's a spring steel. High carbon steel will rust, obviously. Like stainless, it has a lot of chromium in it, or vanadium, or nickel in it, and it resists rusting. Very, very resistant rusting. High carbon knives have a higher carbon content in them, and they will rust. Mm-hmm. But if you take care, like if you just use it and wipe it off, they'll be fine. Like I've cleaned this up a couple times, but I don't know if you can kind of see it. There's a little bit of a bluing on there.
I did see it. No, I did see it when you.
But they patina. It's called a patina.
Yeah. Okay.
I really like that because it like shows age and just like you're using it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a super clean crisp knife. That's
And
just
it doesn't affect the knife at all either.
not
Which
at
is
all.
Nice.
Not at all.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah. So that's a style that I like.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I just got a hunting knife for Christmas actually from a friend
Oh yeah.
that I like. That's kind of teaching me how to bow hunt, really.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, he bought me a knife. It's like, I don't know if it's a good one. I forget the brand of it, but just like an orange knife. Super
yeah.
like, it's got a rubber handle though.
Yep.
Which is like super nice. Just
definitely.
You know, I don't know, skin and stuff. You don't have to worry about it slipping into the.
Yeah, and they're super easy to clean off too.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely. But anyway, back to how I got into it. So Mike Mossington was the guy in North Bay who he treated my knives.
Oh, okay.
He sold grinders there. So that the next year I went to college, and then when you go to college, you get a fat tax return, right?
Yeah.
So I took all my tax return money, spent like $3,200 on a knife grinder.
Wow.
It was a B 2x72, and they're
So what does a knife grinder look like? What's the difference in it? Like, does it?
So it like they say knife grinder because it's pretty generically used for knife making. It's a 2x72 belt grinder. So the belt's 2 inches wide.
Oh, okay.
72 inches long in length.
See, because like I was just thinking, because I've only dealt with metal like through welding and stuff.
Yep.
So like you got the discs and stuff. That's all
Right.
I use. But yeah, so you're actually using a belt.
Yeah, and some
like-
some people do make knives with angle grinders. Like there's
a
the
little wild.
right angle grinder community out there. But
Yeah.
shout out to Knife Talk. But anyway, yeah, so I got that, and to describe it a little bit, like it's a variable speed grinder, so you can turn it right down to off or wide open. I never run it too wide open. I'm just a slow grinder, but it changed, like making my first knives with a file. It took me like a week to make one knife.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just takes forever. The grinder, like I had it done, like ground out, ready for heat treat in like, I'd say less than an hour.
Yeah. Well, when I was in my welding shop class, we had to actually make rings.
Oh yeah.
And we weren't allowed to use powered tools. And I think it was just through understanding how like
Right.
metal kind of works just with your bare hands.
Yep.
And to really show you like, and then I made one out of tools and it was like, I don't know, 2 hours or 3 hours and I was done. But like 2 weeks of just like filing and taking a nut basically and just turning that into a ring.
Yeah.
Or right out of steel or whatever we used, I forget. But
Yeah, it makes you appreciate
seriously.
power tools. But
Yeah.
like there is a thing with hand tools, like the finesse of things. Like you don't mess things up as quick. You can tweak
Right.
it here and there, whatever.
and there's a uniqueness that you can put to it with your hands.
Right.
A machine could never
Yep.
apply, I guess, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty good that way.
So you're all self-taught for the most part?
For the most part, I asked a couple, like, again, Mike, I went and saw him. Like, I got all my supplies from him. So I'd go up and see him once a month or whatever and have a chat with him, ask him questions here and there. Obviously, YouTube was a great learning resource. Like, I mean, there's...
At school right now.
Yeah, 100%. There's so much. And this was before Forge and Fire. Like, then everything blew up. But I got into that, and then nobody really did any smithing around me. So, of course, I got on Kijiji to see what I could find. So, there was a while there I was going around, like, I don't know how many different anvils I had. And just different post vise and a couple rivet forges and whatnot, buying and selling that. But I never have gotten too much into the bladesmithing side of things.
Yeah.
I
like
have
swords and stuff type?
No,
Or
just
just
like
blade and-
forging out knives.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I've done a couple railroad spike knives, which are fun and people think they're super cool. Like I made my mom one, she still has.
That's
It
cool.
was probably the coolest one I ever made. But they are a lot of fun.
Because what are railroad spikes made out of? Straight iron almost? Or
It's just like a very low carbon content steel. Like you can still
Okay.
heat treat them and get a decent hardness out of them, but like 1095, you're guaranteed to get a good hard blade, and it's so cheap. Like that,
Okay.
there's about $5 in steel in that knife. Like
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
so when you start right from scratch, are you getting a sheet of metal?
nope. So I'll get a bar. Now this is
Oh, you actually get a bar piece.
yeah.
Okay.
So like that's the bar stock I get right there.
And you start out with that,
that's right. Yeah.
and then
So then I'd start with
then
this.
you draw it out.
Yeah, actually, you can, I don't know if you can see, but I drew that template on there.
Okay, I was
It's just-
actually going to ask you, do you physically like make a, you know how in woodworking they kind of carve out the panda bear out of the log or whatever?
Yeah,
Like they
yeah.
almost kind of draw the shape of it. I was wondering if you draw the shape out of knife, I guess.
So like, so I made one of these. I finished one of these. I don't know, a couple weeks ago, but it was just a thought I had in my head, and then I thought, oh, that'd be a cool design. So I drew it out on the steel, and then as you go, like kind of tweak it here, tweak it there, and then once you kind of get your shape down, then I'd copy it. So I made a couple of these. So I went from the bar, and these come in like 36 or 48 inch bars.
Okay.
So this is just a chunk off of it. But yeah, I get that. And then you can get it different thicknesses, different widths as well.
And then different steels.
Different steels too. That's right.
Yeah. So
then that turns into that. And then I don't have the finished one, but like this is pretty close to a finished knife, right? So this blade at one point was a bar like that.
Cool. That's what I thought. That's what I had in my mind. I just didn't know. And when you were talking about like folding the metals,
right?
Are you folding this size of metal or thinner metal?
If you're making Damascus, it'd be thinner metal. But once you get it to your width,
right, you would get it to that width pretty much through all the folding. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, it's not so much folding. Like you'd forge it out, cut it, restack it.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And then that will all piece together.
That's right.
Look almost natural, right?
Oh yeah.
As if it was one piece. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah. Because I'm a newbie to this. I don't know.
No, that's and like it's going so far too. Like it seems like a new thing these days, and it's new to me. I don't know how long it's been around, but is copper Damascus. So you'd have like. There's a company in the States called Baker Forge and Tool, and they're all over Instagram right now. But I got a couple chunks of their metal. But they have, it's the metal that I have. It's a Damascus core clad with copper shims, and then it's got wrought iron on top of that. So when you grind it out and then you etch it. So Damascus you have to etch, and what etching does is it eats away at the high carbon steel. So you use an acid.
Oh, okay.
It eats away at the high carbon steel and doesn't touch it does, but not as bad, the nickel steel. And then when you sand that down, the nickel polishes up, and then you have the dark and the light contrast each other.
Cool.
So that's like, and this is called Damascus G10, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a representation of it.
And is that a metal handle?
No, this is like a fiberglass handle.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
I was wondering what material this was.
Yeah. So it's called G10. So it's like layered fiberglass and resin, and I forget what the other one is. Yeah, people have to forgive me on that.
See that, but there you go.
Yeah, and then you'd have this. So this is stabilized palm. That's palm wood. Cool. And this is micarta. I like using a lot of this like natural looking material. So this is just natural micarta, and micarta is essentially layered jean. Really? Like cotton. So you can. This is actually linen. And then you can also get burlap. So you know how like coffee sacks look? Yeah. It's just a bigger weave burlap micarta is. Really? So it's just layered on top and then compressed with a bunch of epoxy in there, or resin. Yeah. Hardened. So it's really durable, water resistant, and it also ages well. Like
cheap though?
Yeah, not bad. I think this sheet is like in that form right there, I think is $30. Okay. So you get 4, 5, 6 knives out of that, depending on how big they are.
And that's for the handles.
Handles, yeah.
Handles, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. So interesting.
Oh yeah, and like this is a little wild looking. I got this from a guy in Ontario, but this is maple.
And it looks like one of those epoxy like river tables. You know
yeah. But like the possibilities for handle material are like endless. Like if you have something in mind, somebody can make it, or you can make it yourself.
Yeah. No, it's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
And what's the best way to fasten your handles on your knives? Because I noticed here a lot of yours are fully around, like,
yeah, so that's called a full tang knife.
Full tang?
Yeah, so essentially this is what the handle would look like all in here. So then what I do is I'd go through and just drill a bunch of 1/4-inch holes throughout. And then I also would drill pinholes, so you can see like in that knife you have there, and in this one there's 2 pins. Cool. So that they're brass or stainless pins that I use. They'd go right through your tang and into your handle material, and then I have a 2-part 24-hour epoxy. Okay. And just mix that up. That holds it on. You can also use, and I do have some, I just haven't used them yet, but they're called Corby bolts. And what they are, it's 2 bolt heads and then a screw that goes through the center. So the bolt heads like
do they like squish together?
Kind of a thing. Yeah, it's a clamp pretty much. You screw them together. Clamp, yeah. So the heads are bigger, and then obviously the thread size is smaller, and it holds them. It holds the scales together essentially. So you probably wouldn't have to epoxy them, but I mean the epoxy is definitely worth it.
So this is just as strong, showing the metal on top and bottom, and around it as it would be if the whole handle was around the metal as well.
Oh yeah, okay, so
Like-
that's called the full tang. What you're talking about is called like a stick tang or a hidden tang.
Okay.
Lots of chef's knives are stick tang or hidden tang, and
Yeah.
they're just as strong.
Just as strong?
Some people will say, "Oh, it's not as strong." Well, that's just not true. Like if you're trying to take your knife and pry something apart, or if you're trying to like stick it into a tree and use it as a footrest, like that's just not what they're meant for. But if you're using it like a knife, should be used properly.
Exactly.
You'd have no problem at all.
Right. And this is considered a tang if you can see it. This piece.
That's right. That's called a full tang. All knives have a tang or should.
So it's a tang. If the handle's not on here, it's like that's the tang of the knife. Is
That's
that
right,
basically
yeah.
what you'd say?
Yeah.
Like that one that you're holding, that's just the tang.
This is the tang right here.
That's cool.
Or if it's hidden, I wish I had one, but okay, right here, perfect example.
Right.
This is my skinning knife. You cannot see the tang there.
Yeah.
But the tang, I can tell you, goes back into there. It's just a stick tang.
Exactly.
Looks like a small little stick, and it's held in with a rivet there as well.
Cool.
Not a rivet, sorry. Just a brass pin. But yeah, the only problem you might have is if you're actually prying, but knives are meant to cut this way, right? Not
Yeah.
pry.
Exactly. Unless you're being really, I don't know, rough with it.
Right.
Just like
I mean,
hacking.
people like, so this would be considered like a bushcraft style knife. Like
Yeah.
it's 3/16 of an inch thick, so it's a lot thicker.
Yeah.
It's got like the point is designed to be in the center of the whole blade, so across the handle into there. Sorry, that was terrible. Anyway, the point is in the center of the blade, so people that would want to like make a hole for a bow drill, so you can take your knife, stick it in there, and if you press down, that point is in the center.
Yeah.
It's also got a Scandi grind. So a Scandi grind is not a full flat grind. That's considered like a full flat grind right there.
I noticed that. I was like, you didn't even touch some of the side of that. So
That's right. So it leaves more heft behind it. You got a very thick tang. So people that would want a baton.
yeah.
Batoning is essentially, do you know what batoning is?
Not batoning, but I know what a baton is.
Right. So baton is like to hit something.
Yeah,
Like
right.
So batoning is if you take like a piece of wood, right? And then you'd want to split it. So you stick your knife on there and whack the end of it with a stick.
Which I do every time I go get firewood.
Yeah? Okay. So there you go.
Well, with my axe, I guess you hit the back of the axe and boom. But
Right.
I wouldn't do that with my bushcraft because, I don't do it. But
Yeah. But like that's what a knife like this is. So it's thicker. It's heavier.
so that's the advantage of it.
It's more. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's by design, right? Now, if you had that in the kitchen, like that's a pretty hefty knife to have in the kitchen, right? And same as this, like this isn't really meant for batoning. It's a thinner knife, but it's great for hunting. Like it doesn't have a very tall profile. It's not super long. So
Is the hunting knife kind of just a generic knife?
Generic knife, smaller. I used to like bigger knives, but like I've gutted and skinned moose, deer, and bear with this.
Wow. And once you find something that works, it's like, why change it?
Yeah. Like, and really, in my opinion, personally, I don't find anything like a blade over 4.5 inches is all you ever need.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Anytime I went to the bush, I always carried a small hatchet and that knife.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So I'm interested in quenching your knives.
Right. Yeah.
So basically, if nobody understands, like that's like dipping your knife or like sinking your knife.
Rapid cooling.
Rapid cooling. Like basically taking your knife and putting it in a pot of water. And in a sense, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if you always use water. I know you use oil or
So
is there another form to use that?
Well, air quenching.
Oh wait, like you said, yeah, because it's slowly.
Some steels, so like A2, D2, almost every stainless is all air hardening. Mm-hmm. So air hardening just means so that right there is AEBL. That this stainless steel right here. AEBL is a very common surgical steel, so used in like surgical knives for surgeries and whatnot.
Yep.
But that one, you heat up to 1925 degrees, hold it there for 15 minutes, and then you could just pull it out of the oven and let it sit there.
Wow.
And it's cooling, and it'll harden. Now, it is extremely common to use aluminum plates. So you just I have a bunch of aluminum plates, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch thick. And when you pull them out, you sandwich the steel in between those two plates. It keeps it straight, and it cools it faster.
Right.
And you can also use compressed air to blow in between there, and it just cools it off a lot faster.
Oh, wow.
So rather than having a bunch of, like if you do 6 or 8 knives at once, rather than having 8 knives hanging around that are extremely hot, you can cool them off a lot faster, get them done with, and then
Wow.
you can
And that doesn't affect the hardiness. The hardness. Is that how to say it?
Hardness.
Oh,
yeah.
I was trying to say like hardiness or the. Does that make sense? I don't know what I was trying to say. Anyways, the hardness.
The hardening of it.
Yeah, the
Like
hardening
the
of
speed.
it. Yeah, the
Well, you
the hardening process of it, I guess.
it honestly probably helps a little bit because it cools
Really?
down a little bit faster.
Cools it faster?
Yeah, like so, and then like so that's stainless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Air hardening or like an A2D2, and I'm sure there's more. I'm obviously definitely don't have all the answers.
It's all good. I don't think many people are listening even know what A2D2 even means.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Well,
But they can look it up while they're listening.
Oh yeah, and a plug for Knife Engineering. If you do want to know about a bunch of steels, there's a book called Knife Engineering. It's like $45, and it's like an insane wealth of knowledge for knife steels.
Cool.
I have it in the shop. But anyway, so you'd have stainless, which is an air hardening steel, and it's quenched with aluminum plates.
Mm-hmm.
So quenching is the what do you want to call it? The act of hardening. That's when your blade becomes hard.
Cool.
So the heat treating process in a hole, you have to heat up the steel to its critical temperature. So critical temperature varies through all steels, and then cool it rapidly or whatever the recipe calls for. So that's an air hardening steel. You can just let it hang.
Mm-hmm.
This steel is an oil hardening steel, 1095. A lot of high carbon steels are an oil hardening or water hardening.
And when it's that, it's like you need to dip it right away, right?
Has to drop 1,000 degrees within a second, give or take. So I started off using canola oil, and a lot of people do.
Really?
Yeah, super cheap and easy to use, and it smells like French fries, right?
Yeah, that's nice.
So that works really well. And then there's like a specifically designed oil for knife making or axe hammer making, whatever you want to call it. Parks 50, that's what it's called. Okay. Or AAA, so it's a little lighter. Mm-hmm. But it's a much more viscous oil. So
viscous isn't like finer
runny,
than oil?
Runny.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So more, like it could be absorbed more? Is that the goal?
No. You want so when you heat treat, right, it creates a vapor jacket. So if you were to put oil in a container, and you dunk a knife in there, you'll see this vapor jacket, like all the bubbles coming off. Mm-hmm. It's not cooling as fast as you think. If there's an air jacket around that, it doesn't harden as fast. So interestingly enough, there's a YouTuber called Alex Steele, and he just did an experiment using a whole bunch of different quenchants. Quenchant is like oils, waters, right? He used ketchup. Ketchup did not work because it's so thick that it just caused an air bubble. When you put the knife in there, it just caused an air bubble and it wouldn't harden because there's nothing. So if you have a very runny liquid, that vapor jacket can dissipate very quickly and it can cool down a lot more.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of high carbon steels like this one is oil hardening. This is W2. It's a tool steel, and it's primarily water quench. Water is very violent. 1095 is actually also considered a water quenching steel, but you'd want to have all your ducks in a row per se, because it like water is very vicious on steel.
Okay.
Like it cools so hard, and it just like essentially like you could think of being us if you're in a nice hot shower and then you just go jump in the lake right now in March. Yeah. Like your body's just gonna tense right up. Yeah. It's such a shock to the system. Essentially the same thing with steel.
Oh, okay.
So that's what it's doing, is you're having all this grain structure in the metal, and when it's at its critical temperature, they're all just floating, right? And then the particles in the steel. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not a scientist.
That's all good.
But
we can dive into that in a different podcast.
Yeah, right. So you'd have them all floating there at its critical temperature, and then when you dunk it in oil, water, or air, they all come together real tight. And if you were to snap that blade, you'd look at it and it'd look very like you can see the grain of the steel.
Does it look raw? Is that a way to put it? Or not really?
So raw, almost like how to put it, like smoky. I don't.
Smoky. No, that makes
if you were to look at like very
dull, like
dull and like
I know
gray,
what you mean.
like
I think
a solid
I can picture
gray
it.
color, and not wouldn't have high ridges, like a nice tight grain, I guess you could say. Yeah. So the grain structure in the steel, you want it to be nice and tight, and like a fine grain structure is what you're going for. So then once it's hard, you want to relax that a little bit, because since there's so much stress there, like if you were to bend it or anything like that, it just essentially snap. Okay. Like if you had a files are quite hard, like 65, 68 Rockwell, 70. And if you were to bend that, they just snap. most knives you want between like 57 and 62 Rockwell, depending on stainless or whatever they are. Different metals have their better sweet spots.
Yeah.
So to do that,
and they would have charts if you wanted to look that up.
100%.
Like
Knife Engineering, like I said, has like a ton of steels in the back. Perfect. The best heat treat recipe, and it's considered a recipe because they'll give you the critical temp, how long to soak it for, what to quench it in, and then your temperatures
for the best
hardness and toughness.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
Can you make a knife and you want it more for strength and toughness? Yep. Like, is that like you could go one route with the knife?
Definitely. So you have it hard, right? You say you get it 62 Rockwell, but you want it down to 57, so then you temper it. Tempering is like massaging the steel all over again.
So that's the reheating and process, like reheating and
warming, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Because you'd only bring it up to about 300 to 500, depending on the steel. Again, like there's so many different steels, but we'll say for 1095 again, you'd bring that up to 400 degrees for 2 hours. Let it soak there. Take it out of the oven. Let it cool. Put it back in 400 degrees for 2 hours, and that just relaxes everything. And you got a knife that will hold an edge, will bend and come back, and like just an all-around good steel, good blade.
Yeah. So what's essentially happening from doing that warming and heating process?
It's just like it's relaxing the steel.
Blade doing? So it's like settling almost, just like like it's.
So there is scientific behind it. Like
I'm just like wondering what the particles are doing. You know what I mean? Like it's just like
man, yeah.
I know that's kind of.
I should have read up because that knife engineering book, like there's austenite, martensite, and I can't remember, but like in tempering, I think it's austenite turns to martensite, whatever the one is. But in tempering, it like there'll be some retained austenite, and it turns it into martensite.
Oh, okay.
Which is the hardened steel.
And it does more of that as you keep doing
it kind of transitions the other over.
Cool.
But it also relaxes the steel. So you have a very tense, we'll say, blade after you quench it.
Yeah.
And then in tempering it, it relaxes the steel, just kind of takes any stress out of it or relaxes the stress a little bit. And you have a much more durable, tough blade.
Cool.
Whatever you want to call it.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
It really is.
Oh, yeah. And like there's like, so 1095, it's a real old school steel. This one's 52100. It's a ball bearing steel. It's considered to be a much higher grade steel than 1095 for performance wise. And then there's other steels above that. Like you can, like there's two new steels that just came out that I'm aware of, and it's called CPM MagnaCut. CPM is crucible powdered metal.
Okay.
It's just a company in the States that makes metal, but it's essentially powder that's blown through a nozzle, compressed, and that's what makes the steel, and which forms better grain structure in the process of making steel.
Really?
So by the time you get it, it's good. So anyway, CPM MagnaCut and CPM Apex Ultra, or just Apex Ultra. Anyway, one is a like considered a higher carbon steel, one's considered a stainless. And it's just that they've taken science from over the years, from other blade steels that have been developed, and the knowledge that they have now have developed these. So now that's like the high end steel. Yeah, you could get into that, but when it comes to the end of the day, like a knife's a knife, in my opinion. If you have a decent steel, you got a good heat treat, you got a good grind on it, and you take care of it. Yeah. Like there's 4 knives down in the kitchen right now, and they're from the 50s. That I've just got. They're high carbon steel. They've been taken care of, and they work flawless. And like they didn't have any CPM steel back then. Like it's just simple steels, right? So,
the history behind all that metal is insane.
Oh man, yeah,
insane.
Yeah, and like before we got this podcast going on, like I just mentioned Woots, and like if people want to go down that road, like look up Woots, and I can't remember how it's WOUTS something like that, but it's essentially
there's a lot of ways you could spell Woots.
Yeah. But like to look that up and the history of that, or like how they came up with like Japanese smiths, the way they traditional smithing then.
It's crazy because that's, I think, in the Chinese culture was who discovered kind of steel and melting it and turning into blades almost, or like the first discovery of steel was in China.
Yeah, them or Japan. I'm not
like
sure, but
1300 BC.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah, and like just
Yep.
see how far
Totally.
we've come now with it, right?
Right. Do you know how they discovered steel?
No.
So they were shoveling like coal
Yeah.
into the big furnaces, and a lot of times getting the coal, and obviously iron would get in the mix.
Right. Yeah.
And then when they would clean those out, there was still iron still sitting there because it
Really?
wouldn't like disappear, right? So, anyways, I think they just started figuring that out.
That
and
is cool.
slowly just started like discovering this thing. So then they probably just did buckets of iron just to see what happened. It would have just like melted in this formless.
Must be.
Form.
Yeah, I'd never heard that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Just read about it today because I had to
Yeah.
talk to you.
Right on. That's cool.
No, it's really interesting. It was really cool. Steel was first produced in 1800 BC. So
Okay.
that's when they started really like making steel become a thing, which is cool. But 1300, I think it was discovered.
Right, and then you'd have like the Bronze Age and stuff like that too. Like
Exactly.
You go through and man, I couldn't imagine using a bronze blade. Like that's brass, so it's slightly bronze, and like you might cut one thing with it and just get dull again. Like it's very, very soft.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I wouldn't. Anyway.
How shapeable is heated metal? I wrote down that. Like when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
smashing on it. Like
Yeah, way easier than cold metal. So there's cold forging, right? Like there's
Really?
like tinsmithing, I guess you could say. Like you could take a chunk of metal and hit it.
Yeah, and it's gonna
Right.
dent.
It'll dent, do whatever. And like I've done that before, like brass, obviously super soft. So you want to cool like this knife right here. You want a cool texture on the front of it, so you can't like it's hard to see. But if you look at the front of that guard,
Yeah.
you see all those little like dots on it.
Kinda, yeah.
So like I just took
I don't have my glasses on, so
yeah.
hard to focus.
I just took a punch and just whack.
Cool.
So you can mold metal that way. But obviously, if you have a hotter substance, it's
Right.
like hitting clay.
Mm.
Like it's obviously
Yeah,
not as
just,
easy.
it's like Play-Doh. It just shapes and molds the way
Right.
you want it.
Right.
Which is why you need an anvil. Because
Yeah.
you got to smash.
Right.
Anvils, do they make those anymore?
Oh yeah,
They still make them?
yeah, definitely.
But they're expensive, right? Aren't they
Yeah.
really expensive?
They can be like Rigid out of Germany. They make really good anvils, and like you'd be paying $2,000 for 200-pounder. Like I mean, but online now. So
So it's 200-pound a big anvil?
That's a decent size, yeah. Like it's pretty average for a shop anvil. A lot of 100-pounders
okay.
are around 115.
What's like the heaviest people are going for anvils?
Oh man, like they're
I guess the ones that are
Endless.
just like the anvil itself. It's like a table itself, right? Aren't there anvils like that?
well, there's like swage blocks, or not swage blocks, striking anvils, which is just like a big chunk of metal with legs on it too.
Yeah, and you just...
Yeah.
Just
So if
smash 'em.
you had like team striking, or if you just wanted to move a lot of metal and didn't need a horn, or like, or people go, there's a lot of knife makers just use that. Like I mean, an anvil is essentially anything that you can use for that's heavy, flat, and somewhat hard.
Right.
Right? People have like there's one gentleman I know, and he started on a trailer hitch,
Smart.
like just a ball on a trailer hitch.
That's so funny, but
yeah,
smart.
super small.
Like, yeah.
But I mean, that's something that
Works.
hitting against.
you can make a pocket knife out of that, no problem, right?
Sure, you could do whatever. Really, essentially, like your hammerhead's not that big. You just have to be pretty good with the bottom. But like my anvil, I've had some Peter Wrights. Like I had a 260-pound Peter Wright, was super nice, and I should never have sold that. I've had a 74-pound anvil, 110. The one out in the shop right now, it's 110, and I just got it from Princess Auto.
Cool.
Like
Do anvils get old? Like
oh yeah,
They
like
do.
a lot of my Peter Wright anvils are from the 1800s.
like unsafe type old though? Sorry,
like-
I know they last,
no.
but do they last like to be durable for a long time?
Some of them will break. Some of
Really?
so a cast like the new anvils are cast steel, really,
Okay.
which is better. So like you have like a hardened your steel that you'd want the anvil made out of, say 4140 or whatever. Like, I don't know, but it's all just one steel.
Yeah.
A lot of the old anvils would be like a wrought iron base,
Oh, okay, yeah.
which like old anchors, wagon wheels, wrought iron. Again, people can look that up, but it'd be a wrought iron base with like a 1/2 inch or 1 inch piece of tool steel forge welded on top, because a lot of anvils were forged.
Yeah.
So you'd have great big power hammers that they just forge the anvil base out of, and then forge weld on the tool plate, on the tool steel plate for the striking phase. Now the problem with that, old anvils back in the day, like from the 1800s or whatever, nowadays they're starting to fall off. Like They'll just start separating. And it's not like, oh, it's all of a sudden just happened. It's been happening for years. So like you said, they'll age. That'll happen.
Yep.
But they are fixable. There's lots of guys fixing them.
Cool.
But
it just seems like a piece that could just like last forever, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely.
Like it would just be like...
It's a big chunk of steel if you take care of it.
Right.
You know? Like,
is there a way to take care of it?
Oh, yeah.
Like polish it up, slick it up?
No, I would just say like with our climate, cold, hot, all that, lots of moisture in the air.
On the metal?
It could be. So just like I've just have an oily rag.
Keep a black light right beside it.
No, if you just have an oily rag, wipe it down.
Cool.
Right? Or if you're using it all the time, not much can really build up on there.
Yep.
But I mean, lots of people have kept them in their gardens, use them as decoration. Like they're still fine. They just get rusty and whatever. But
cool.
Yeah.
Could you forge, when you tie in your boat on the dock?
Hmm?
That big metal steel thing? Could you use that to forge?
I'm sure you could.
No problem.
I mean, I don't know how hard it, like if you hit it, it might start having dents, but sure,
right.
It's heavy enough.
So will the anvil will actually get dents from smashing the steel and then that soft steel absorbing
more so you like overstrike your material or hit the anvil with your hammer, because generally you'd want your hammer a little harder than the anvil.
Yeah. So how hard are you hitting the steel when it's melted though? Like, are you really gonna have to strike it, or are you kind of just like tapping almost like a?
Depends on what you're doing. Like if you're trying to move some metal, then you're hitting it. But if you're like planishing it, like you're just like trying to flatten something out,
moving
or,
as in like stretching it out and like
that, or just moving it whatever way you like. If you say you got a piece of round stock, so you got a 1-inch round bar, and you want to turn that into flat steel, you're gonna be smashing that pretty hard.
Right.
Like you want to get to where you're going fast, and then when you get to the closer steps. Then you start to be more delicate with it. Or like I said, you have like
the sculpting phase, I guess you would say.
Yeah, right? Kind of a thing. Or you use like planishing blows, people call them, where you just kind of like just tapping.
Really?
Or texturing, whatever.
Yeah.
Or, and also too, you can use like top and bottom tools. So if you had somebody working with you, you could use like a flatter. So flatter would be like, it looks like a hammerhead, but the bottom would be bigger and it's all flat.
Yeah.
So say you have like I said, a round bar, and then you want to make that into a flat piece of steel. You forge that down, and like obviously you can't hit 100% perfectly flat with your hammer. So then you use a flatter to go along there, and then you'd hit the flatter, and then in turn that flat face would smooth out your steel, so you go along and
cool.
Just different. There's so many different tools, and like I've barely scratched the surface with that.
Yeah. So I bought a friend of mine's like moving to a new apartment, moving away kind of thing. And I was like, oh, I'll buy a kitchen set of knives. Like I don't know, bought him a cutting board and a set of knives just because why not, right?
Yeah.
Saving money on that. And I think that what you mentioned was the teardrop or the raindrop. Is that like textured?
No.
I
mean, you could feel it maybe with your fingernail if it's a really deep etch, but generally it's pretty smooth.
So the knives I bought, it was a super awesome knife set.
Yeah.
But it had dents actually in the blade.
Right.
So that would have been caused from striking it. Like,
are you taught like were they all uniform?
Yeah, like it was kind of all.
I forget what that name. There's a word for that.
And it was textured, so it felt like little, just like little bumps.
But like, was it all in a line along the blade, like right here, or was it just random bumps all over the place?
It was kind of random, but it still had a shape to it, like that on the top.
Right.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the blade wasn't touched with it.
Okay.
It was just all the top, but it looked like it almost was like hit with like a little metal pickaxe piece.
Oh yeah.
And it almost looked like someone put like smashes in it.
So yeah, that's just like.
But it was all over. Like they were almost
just textured.
Yeah, is that normal for?
Be a thing.
Just
like so.
Art?
So like, I don't have any here, but
So it's just like this.
Yeah.
This knife right here. I don't know if people need to see this, but. Just like this, but then all the dots were above on that part.
Yeah, so that'd be considered like a hammered finish, or a brute to forge is a pretty common thing. So like you leave part of your forged finish.
Okay.
Right, so you get more black steel. Again, I don't have one here with me, but when you forge, you develop kind of like a scale up on it, and through that process, it like blackens the steel, right?
Okay.
So you still grind away and get a very clean looking steel, but you leave some of that. And like that's the look that I like. I just haven't quite got there yet. But like that old timey, old school look, brute to forge, you can look that up. And there's quite a few knife makers that do that. And to me, it just looks awesome.
Yeah.
This is like brings like the humanity into making a knife. Because if everything is like shiny, like it kind of looks like it was made from a factory.
Right. This does look like it was made
Right.
from a factory.
Yeah,
It's
like
a beautiful knife.
Yeah, thanks.
What would it? This is kind of off topic, I guess, but what would you charge, for an example, for like a kitchen set?
A kitchen set?
Like
I've never made a kitchen
so
set. So
imagine a block and then just
Right.
like all different shapes. Like what would you? Just a
I
guess.
never even
Thought about
that. But like that knife would be $350 right there.
Top quality. Wow.
But see, that's the thing is
Right.
that's very low price.
Right. No, I agree because
for custom stuff, right?
yeah, that is true because I guess I didn't really think, but you see these handmade knives, they're going for big money. Big money.
Oh yeah,
Like-
but like, in the other hand though, you can go to Canadian Tire and buy a full knife set, J.A. Henkel's, on sale, $250, and you got a nice big 10-inch bread knife, all your steak knives, everything like that, which is great. Like if people are in that market, right on. But if people do want like a custom knife, there's the humanity behind it. There's the story of who you got it from,
The support as well.
and to get into the custom market, like the guy that actually is buying that. He came over. He's like, yeah, I'd like a 8-inch chef knife and just like a paring knife. Like,
Cool.
I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. I can make you that. And then he come over again. He's like, yeah, I'd actually like to get one, the same set for some friends of mine. I was like, okay, well, like, do you want to know how much they are? He's like, oh yeah, well, whatever you charge. I said, well, like they aren't exactly cheap. He's like, oh, that's okay. And I did give him a deal on them, but I told him for the two is going to be $400. He's like, oh, well, yeah, that is a little. They aren't that cheap.
And that's a deal. That is a deal.
I mean, like, it's.
well, this is
I
such
struggle.
a beautiful knife. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, and it's so cool that, like, when you do work for other people, different people's tastes are different. Like he likes that. Not everybody's gonna like these paint colors or these
Yeah,
color
I'm not a big
schemes.
fan
Like,
of that, if I'm being honest.
yeah,
Like,
hey,
personally.
and that's just fine. Like I saw that, I was like, wow, like I could make a sick fillet knife out of that. Like
Yeah.
those got that has the colors of
True,
the
that is
ocean or
unique,
something,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know what I put that on, but that's what my eye is drawn
Mm-hmm.
to. Or like darker stuff like this, like natural. It's just so different.
Yeah,
And
I'm a big fan of just like the wood look. I love that. Right
Yeah.
there.
This one?
Your bushcraft knife or
Yeah.
whatever. So I'm a huge fan of that. Or that. That's very similar.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That seems a little too exotic for me. It's a little, if anybody wants to look at that as well.
Definitely.
But I can see why it's an attractive piece for people, and I can see why people would like it. Are you taking both of these pieces?
Yeah, that'd be like
This
and
is
then-
one handle. This
Yeah,
piece.
well, those that's pretty big, so I'd probably try and get like that and a smaller knife out of it or something like that, because that's a lot of wood. Or like what you're doing there, like use the back half, right? Yeah. Like you were just saying, if you just use this all from one knife, well, like
It's a lot of waste, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is you might only use like this much, so then you could save the front of that and use it for like what's called a bolster or something like that. So you can make like a segmented handle. So like the front of your handle could be the front half of that, and then use something else for the
Do you
back
like doing
half.
that? That
Done
looks
it a
neat.
couple
I
times.
guess, yeah, you could do any pattern, right? You could just do like
do it-
checkerboard if you wanted.
Like I
That's
said,
getting crazy, but
yeah. And there's a guy on Instagram, Flying Shark Knives, and he does a lot of like he pretty much just makes handle material now, and he does a lot of segmented stuff, and it's unreal. Like guys are getting into glow in the dark stuff, like
Yeah.
neon. It's
So I
endless.
had an episode with a guy named John Black, and he works with wood. He does like woodworking or whatever. More of an artist, an abstract artist, he considered himself, I guess.
okay.
But I asked him, is it hard for him to, somebody wants a table or somebody wants a certain art piece or anything, right? For him to create. A lot of times he says they like tell him what to make, or sorry, a lot of times they just say, you make it and we'll just take it however you think best, right? And most people are comfortable with that. But in my head, I go, oh, like what if they don't like what I think I'd like, you
That's
know?
right. Oh,
and is
yeah.
that tough for you? And
100%.
do you give them an idea of what shape they'd have?
Yeah.
'Cause when
So
this guy said an 8-inch knife, kitchen knife or whatever he said, like, did he know it's going to have like this kind of design to it and feel, or?
I did bring that to him and showed him. He said, yep, that's good. But that's what I struggle with. Like what I like, people have bought, like when I first moved to the island here, so I've been here for a year and a half now. I had quite a few knives, and honestly, they were sitting in the junk drawer. I personally didn't like them.
Right. So you thought no good.
Thought no good. Well, Lydia, my wife, was like, you should just finish them. So I did, and I gave them to my father-in-law. He took them. They all sold. People liked them. I was like, oh, okay. So that kind of got me going. I was like, okay, well, maybe what I might not like, other people do. Mm-hmm. And I also struggle with finishing stuff. Like this knife right here is almost done. I have a little bit of cleanup on the bevels.
Ian, don't tell people that, because then they'll be like, oh, I can't rely on him. He'll get it done.
No, they always get done, but like I really struggle with if it's good enough.
Right.
And I struggle with that because it's my eye that's seeing it. For the most part, I'm not calling people stupid here, but for the most part, nobody knows what to look for.
Right.
Right?
Well,
like a knife's a knife.
Knife knowledge is not where your knowledge would ever be.
Right. And I'm always making it as if like a master bladesmith is critiquing my work, which is good in a way because you're like, I try and strive for the best I can make, but then I'll look at other people's stuff and be like, man, my stuff is like way down here.
Yeah.
But it does help to have a wife that's very encouraging, because she kind of gives me a kick in the butt sometimes. Like, hey, no, it's good. Like, go. But like, you make mistakes. Like this sheath, I brought this up here to as a point. It was supposed to be for this knife. I was making it last night, but I made it way too tight. It's supposed to go in another 2 inches, but this rivet right here is too close. So like you make mistakes, but you also learn too. And I honestly find like leather work is almost more zen than doing knives.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love sitting down and like just
it's more of a when you see someone working with leather, it's kind of like in a cozy spot, you know?
Yeah. And
then you see somebody working with metal, it's just kind of like nitty gritty, like smashing and
dirty.
just like dirty, flamey, or whatever you want. So
that's
oily,
right.
Sweating.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. This is like, you almost can have your own like desk studio spot and just kind of work away at it, which is
100%. Always throw on a podcast and just zone
throw
out.
an absolute podcast.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
No, it's amazing. Yeah. What leather working is cool. I've never done it, but I'd love to experience it. And that's the goal, right? I want to experience everything. Back to this knife. I didn't want to leave this question. It's just because there's so many examples. When I grabbed this knife, and I don't think anybody's going to look at knives the same after this podcast, but they're going to just like examine all the knives that they have.
Yeah.
But anyways, I grabbed this and I see the original piece. Very like slick almost feel. But now there's a little bit of a grip. Do you put anything on it? Or is it just naturally? Okay.
Yeah.
I really thought there was going to be some type of seal that you might have put on it, because
not at all.
You look at it and you're like, my hand would slip off that in a second. But then you grab it and it's almost like to the skin, it's natural. Just like natural grip.
But it's also too ergonomics of the handle too, right? Like the way you grab it.
Sorry?
Like how you're like the ergonomic and like the design of the handle too, kind of hold like your hand molds to it. I don't know how else to explain that.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but
yeah, and G10's warm. It's weird like that because it kind of has like a warm feel to it.
Yeah, no,
like, in a way, like kind of like wood is the same way, but
yeah, no, I don't understand, but there's like a grippiness to it, and yeah, I really like it.
And you can get textured G10 too, and like again, like you could texture it yourself. There's a guy and he does like rock texturing, so just take like a Dremel and just like grind in on a bunch of different angles, so it looks kind of like a rock. Yep. And obviously that added a lot of grip to it as well.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
There's so much into knives. And what would be like the cost of somebody getting into something like this?
Depends on what they want to do. Like I said, there's guys using the right angle. There's guys using files. So
there's guys making swords. Like full swords. So
definitely. Like when I started out, if you got yourself some good files, and a drill press is handy, but you can just use a hand drill. Or guys have use 1x30 belt sanders, like the super cheap Delta. You get them on Kijiji or Marketplace for like $50. That you'll burn your steel really quick, which you don't want to do like after it's hardened. But personally, I have a heat treat kiln, so it's digitally controlled. To get one now, like I bought mine, 7 years ago. And it was $1,800 US. So to get one now, you're like $2,500. I just got a new grinder. It was $4,500. Like a bandsaw, a couple $100. Again, like you can get a lot of that stuff used. But if you were to get used stuff and you actually wanted to go full on into it, if you had $5,000, you'd be able to get a pretty decent setup.
Big investment.
Big investment.
Very big investment.
But the thing is, if you decide to invest into that, and you have,
Well, think of this one knife being $300.
yeah,
right?
just sell 10 of them
Exactly.
or 15. Sure, we'll go that way.
Sure. Yeah. Just to make yourself making money.
Right. But if people do decide to go down that road, see, I find it interesting because people look at $5,000 and be like, oh my goodness, how could I invest in that? Well, they'll go out and spend $70,000 on a new vehicle, make payments on it. Go buy a $20,000 car and get yourself some tools in the shop.
Same. It's like, I couldn't imagine starting a business for $10,000.
Exactly.
And then it's like, but you're going to spend $10,000 on random other crap throughout your year. What's it going to matter? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Or dirt bikes. Like I was right into dirt biking for the longest time. Still love them. But you go, like, I'd have no qualms going dumping $5,000 or $6,000 on a used dirt bike, and like, might get a summer out of it and it'll blow up again. But like, you go spend $5,000 on the grinder I got now. I don't really ever expect to buy another one. Like you might have to replace a few bearings here and there, but what's that? Like, that's like doing brakes on your car, right?
Yeah. But don't go spend $5,000 on a forging set,
right?
Basically, if you're not going to use it. So,
but that's the thing too. You can go to Princess Auto. You can buy, like, my anvil was on sale. It was $300. Works great. Like, that's all I need to do. And I built my own forge. There's plans on there. Like,
oh yeah, you were saying. I mean, you were in the living room one time at my house, and you were just saying what you use to make your thing. Yeah. And I was like, oh, very cool. That's just, you can do it with yourself, basically.
Yeah. And like, super primitive. Like, my first forge was a barbecue. I used an old barbecue, had a pipe in there with a hairdryer, and used charcoal.
Right on.
Like, it was so primitive, but that's what I started with. And like, if people have an access to a welder and some cheap plate steel, go to Home Hardware and get their soft fire brick. It's rated for like $3,000. Line it with that, and then you can. I got all the pipe off. It's all just black pipe from Home Hardware, Home Depot. You can get it anywhere, and then welding tips. Like, again, YouTube, wild resource. And to build the whole forge might have taken me like 4 hours. And it's a double burner forge. You can forge weld in it, and it cost me like maybe $100.
Yeah, not like, it's really interesting, and the problem with me is I'm so intrigued about everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And it's really, and I really, I look up to people that, for you an example, that have a real supreme knowledge in one thing. And I mean, you're knowledgeable in leather and carpentry and tons of other things, but like, you're invested in this very niche thing.
Yeah.
And like, you really like expand your knowledge and study on it and like research on it. I find that really attractive and appealing. So I really like want to know what it takes to get into it. But my mind is like, I want to, like, we're going to play hockey in a bit. And it's like, I want to know what it takes to mold your skate and like, figure how they fasten that and how the plastic like connects to the boot and how it like has to be able to absorb shock and pressure and all that stuff. So like, that's just one thing, and that's just the way my brain thinks. Like, I'm just a little different in that way.
Inquisitive,
yeah. But I'm also interested in like, how can I skate better? How can I improve in that way? So it's all like, I don't know, how can I have better vision on the ice? It's all
constant learning.
It's constant learning, and it's just like wanting to learn more. And it's, how do these cameras work, and how does this audio? So I'm really, it's just, I don't know what I just went on about.
No, it's good though.
I'm really interested in knives, and I want to be able to kind of spread that knowledge to other people that are interested in those things.
Oh, that's what you got the Absolute Podcast for, right?
Right. But it's just but this is like an art piece to me. Like, I don't like, I would never use it for, like, my favorite thing in the world is like useful art.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like practical art.
Right.
So you could say a skateboard's a practical piece of art.
Yeah.
Right. Or a coffee machine to make an espresso. It's a type of art, but you're using it every day.
Definitely.
But an art, or a gun, same thing.
Yeah.
Art piece.
Definitely, I can understand that.
Just love going out to shoot. But cleaning your gun and just like having it on the showcase is like a beautiful thing. Same with my bow. Like, I love just looking at my bow.
Yeah.
But then it's like I also get to shoot it, so it's like
Exactly.
I don't know.
Useful stuff. And that's one thing too. Like I wouldn't consider my stuff, like my knives art. There's guys out there that are just phenomenal, like unreal. But it is great when people use them. Like honestly, there's actually a guy I heard from today. I made him a couple skinny knives. He's a trapper back home, and excuse me, he just reached out. He stuck his knives through the dishwasher. PSA for anybody with a custom knife: never stick them in the dishwasher. It's not because they're poor quality; they're just not designed to do that.
They need to be treated right.
Yeah,
and putting them in a dishwasher is not treating them right.
Yeah, and like even if you do have a block of knives, anytime you're using a knife, just wipe it off when you're done, put it back in the block. People always complain about how their knives are so dull and their kitchen knives. If you throw your knife in the sink, like, yes, they're going to get dull super fast.
Yeah.
You got a porcelain, you got a glass, porcelain, or stainless steel sink. Like, you may as well just take your knife and whack it on the ground. Same kind of deal, right?
Yep. And then day in, day out of constant, just like throwing it in the sink and then washing it. Yeah.
But if you just wipe it off and put it back in. Anyway, he put them in the dishwasher and kind of screwed them up a bit. Like, they're still completely usable, but they're rusty now. And
I was trying to think of an example on how you could explain that. Like, why would, like, some people might be listening being like, why the frig, like, who cares if you put a knife in a dishwasher or whatever, a custom knife? But I'm trying to think of an example of
just the materials aren't used, like, meant for that, right?
Right.
You got real wood, and you have
I guess it'd be like
real steel.
I guess it'd be like a gun. You wouldn't ever take your gun and take a pressure washer to it. You know?
That's a very good example.
Like, you're gonna wipe it with oil and take your cleaning cloths and go down the barrel and stuff. You're not just gonna be like
that's a perfect example. And like, it's super harsh on it. Like, so epoxy, like, if you were to take that knife, right, or this one or whatever, and heat it up, like, if you were to take even a heat gun and then warm that right up again, the epoxy will probably let go.
Okay.
It's not meant for heat. It's a very, very strong, tough epoxy, but heat will melt stuff, right? And dishwashers get super hot.
Yep.
So like that, and then natural materials, like especially wood or anything like that, they absorb water. They don't handle heat well. So obviously that's going to cause a problem as well.
Yeah.
And then get into the steel, like stainless steel, not so much. And almost every kitchen knife set that you get from Canadian Tire, Walmart, Home Depot, whatever, generically is stainless steel. So that's why you don't get rusting or anything like that on them. And they can handle the dishwasher. And the materials they use are just like phenolic or very dense plastic. So it doesn't really get affected by the steel or the dishwasher heat.
Yeah.
So just kind of different in that way, but. How do we get on that?
I was talking about myself a little bit for a second and then dived into...
Oh, well, hey, there you go. There's some knife care tips for everybody.
No, it's true. I think it's important. Well, I never understood why big kitchens, guys will come and sharpen people's knives for them. And it's like, is that really that important? But I work at a university just like every now and then, and a guy comes in every 2 or 3 months and comes in, sharpens all the guys' knives for him, and keeps them up to par. And I asked the chef, I was like, is that really that important? He's like, it's very important. Like, it's like...
It's their tool.
Right. It's
the same thing. Like, if I had a hammer that had no head on it, and you're trying to put a nail in with just a wooden stick, like, that
sucks. You sure the stick's not good enough?
You know what I mean, though? And it's, honestly, like, people... There's a bit of a...
stigma?
Not a stigma, but like different opinions on it. People say that if you have a very sharp knife, it's extremely deadly. Well, my opinion on it is if you have a very sharp knife, it's extremely safe. Because you don't need to put any effort into it. It'll cut. It's doing exactly what you do. But when you have a dull knife...
It's when you're hacking away.
Right. When you really got to push on it, you're putting more weight behind it. Well, then all of a sudden it slips and it's not going to cut straight because it's not sharp. But it's sharp enough that it could take the end of your finger off, or the point is still very pointy. You could stab yourself.
Right, and that prime example, guys. I was camping. I was camping, so we went out. We did like a full day hike in the woods, and camped out on this beautiful like cliff face with our hammocks and stuff. Yeah. And before we ended the night, 2 of the boys. It was 3 of us, but I stayed back. I just stayed at the camp, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna get the fire ready, kind of get some wood cut. I was getting some just like shavings and stuff. Yeah. But there's a piece that I just kind of wanted to break with my pocket knife, whatever. But I was like kind of hacking at it. Like I was like, come on, I can't do this. And I was like, oh, I'll do like 3 more of these and then I'll go put gloves on because this is kind of getting scary. So they walk away. They go get water. There was like snow at the top of the mountain or whatever. They saw like some puddles. Go filter the water, bring it back down because I didn't think we had any. So anyways, I stayed back. I was like, I'll have the fire going when you come back. Next thing you know, I'm hacking. I'm like, I'll do one or 2 more of these and then I'll grab some gloves and really go at it. Did it? Slit like my thumb, like straight down the middle.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you've cut your finger before.
Yes.
You know when it pulsates?
Yes.
Like it's like thumping, like it has a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Anyways, I split it and then I shoved my finger right in the snow really quick and then I pull it out. And next thing you know, like the skin was tight. Yeah. And wherever I cut it down the middle, it just went. And then all the fat was like coming out of my thumb. So it's pulsating. I'm losing blood like crazy. Like I don't really get nervous or anything like with blood or cutting or stuff, but I was just like, I gotta heal this thing because it was split. Like I just didn't want it to. Anyways, I taped it. Then I ran up to the top. Sorry, I butchered that story. There was no snow around me. There's snow up top.
Right.
Had to run all the way up to the top and just like hold my thumb in the snow for as long as I could. And then slowly they came back and I was like, man, like my thumb is gone. Like, I don't know, like there's like no color left in it and it was bad. But anyways, got super glued that thing.
Isn't that the best stuff?
It's amazing, eh?
100%.
I didn't think it would be good, but like I knew it was good to seal because that was the first thing I asked for, but I didn't know if it would be good for the inside of my skin.
Right.
Like I was like, is this okay for my blood? But anyways, pinched my finger, super glued her, and then just took duct tape for the rest of the night.
Nice.
She was fine.
Oh man, yeah, super glue is mint.
No scar left. So.
How long ago was that?
1 year ago.
Really?
9 months or 11 months ago. So April, we went out for a big hike last year and split my thumb.
Unreal.
Right down the center.
Oh, I hate that. Like,
oh, it's not nice. It's scary.
Definitely. I made a knife for someone and brought it to them, and they have a son. He's 10, and he went to like the mom pulled it out of the sheath, and he went and grabbed it like this, and like it was sharp and everything. I just about jumped out of my chair. He didn't cut.
Show people how to tell if a knife's sharp or not. Show them the example of way to do it.
I mean, I just would look at it and you definitely
can tell.
Oh well, I mean,
I always go like this.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I just tell how sharp it is by like the roughness of it.
So like it should, like there's some people that like scrape the back of their finger.
Yeah.
I always see if it'll cut my hair.
Oh, okay.
Or like cut a piece of paper.
So I was told, I don't know if this is true, but when you rub your thumb across, the grainier it feels or the rougher it feels, the sharper it is.
Give or take, yeah.
So I always did that. But one time I watched my dad and he like threw his fingers down and he's like, he would just like go like this with his thumb or go like this. And I was like, why are you doing? Like, it's scary. Like,
I don't like that. Like, just.
You queeze right up.
Yeah I don't know at all. But like, anytime I sharpen a knife, like, I'll just check it with, like, if it'll cut my hair and then cut a piece of paper. Slowly cutting a piece of paper. Like,
just like long ways kind of thing. Like,
yeah, or like back and forth through
really?
waves.
That's really sharp if it's able to the figures down.
And if you use like thinner stuff like phone book paper, you can tell like if there's still burrs left on there because it'll catch. Mm-hmm. So then you need to sharpen it a bit more. But
right.
Yeah. Well, and like again, there's guys out there that like. I just use my belt grinder. There's guys that'll use like a wicked edge system. Mm-hmm. Like it perfectly sets a bevel on whatever degrees that you want. Uses different stones. I just go 220 grit belt with a 400 grit belt and then like a 3000 grit belt. Yep. And then just strop it on leather.
Cool.
Works really good for me anyway.
Right on.
Yeah.
I think we might come to an end.
Yeah. Hey, sounds good, man.
You have a company though for knives.
Yeah. SBG Knives.
SBG Knives. All right. Is it? Do you have a website?
No, straight Instagram.
Instagram.
This year,
Facebook at all or no?
No,
just Instagram.
No, just Instagram. But this year, I want to get a website going.
Okay.
So
I got a guy.
Yeah. Nice. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'd like to get a website going. I don't know. Use Shopify or something like that. Seems pretty simple, but
perfect.
Get that going. Get some stock up and
SBG.
SBG. Yeah.
What's that stand for?
Saved by Grace.
Saved by Grace. I like that.
Yeah. I tried for the longest time, like Ian McCandless or McCandless Knives. I always thought that sounded stupid.
Candle knives.
Yeah. Candlestick Forge. I don't know. Something like that. But
yeah.
SBG came to mind. And
I like that. Saved by Grace
good.
Knives. if that's how you want to say it. SBG. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Cool.
All right, Ian McCandless, everybody. Go check out SBG Knives on Instagram.
Yep.
That's it. That's the whole
That's
tag.
all it is.
Perfect. Also, I have a gift for you.
No way.
2 $5 Piccadilly coupons.
Oh,
$5
sick.
Piccadilly, and I got some stickers for you. So
Oh, sick.
yeah, I'll
Love
make sure to
stickers.
give those to you before we leave.
Awesome.
All right, guys, go to piccadillycoffee.ca if you didn't already. Get your 20% off, and also go to SBG Knives.
You got her. Right on. Thanks,
Perfect.
Mitchell.
Thanks, Ian.
Bye.
Appreciate it.